Today's video is going to be a little different. I'm always showing you me working on Jeeps and off-roading in Jeeps, but today we're going to get ready for the first wheeling trip of the year. I know that's pretty pathetic since it's the middle of March, but we just haven't, between the weather and everyone's schedules, haven't gotten out yet this year. So that's going to consist of getting the truck out, checking all the fluids, getting the hitch put in the back, hooking up to the trailer, pulling that out. I did go over the trailer right before the last time I used it, which hasn't had many miles on it, so as long as the tires are good, we're good to roll. And then I think we're going to take the Rotary Jeep this time, so I got to dig it out and take the top off and check fluids, things like that. So let's do it. I like to start by kind of making a pile on the floor of everything that I have to have, because if it's sitting on the floor and I'm tripping over it, I probably won't forget it. So I have a couple different trucks that I use when I haul things, so it's kind of a pain to have everything in each truck, so I usually move it back and forth. So I have this old like tote thing that I keep some oil, antifreeze, fire extinguisher, strap, shackle, power steering fluid, brake fluid, things like that. So it's kind of my fluid bin. I'll put the strap in the Jeep. So next up I'll get my tool bag ready. So I know this kind of looks like a lot, but this is pretty much my basic marketplace travel deal and off-roading stuff. Luckily we always go in a group, and generally if I forget something, someone else has it, and if they forget it, maybe I have it. So got my truck box. This usually stays in the truck. I keep a little oil and water in the Jeep, but this is just mainly for the tow rig. Same way with my 1/2-inch impact gun. I don't usually take this on the trail, but I keep I keep my impact socket. It doesn't want to stay on there. I keep my impact stick in the truck because if I need to change the trailer or truck tire, I use this. Otherwise, the Jeeps, there's really nothing that big on the Jeep, so I keep a 3/8 gun in the Jeep with a 3/4 impact for the lug nuts. This covers a lot of stuff on my Jeep. And then I have just a few sockets for 3/8 that I take with me. Somebody almost always needs the air compressor, whether it's me or a friend. This thing is a beast. It's a little big, but it's nice because you have an extra battery, and this will pump up a Jeep tire, many Jeep tires, in a hurry. This is my electrical bin, so I keep a little torch and some solder in here, but also tons of crimp-on connectors, jumper wires, test light, extra fuses, and then in the top I keep a bunch of various connectors, lengths of wire with ends on it. Electrical gremlins can be a huge problem, so jumper wires are great because if you pinch or fry a wire or just need to start something or jump something, you can really help yourself there. I also carry a 12-volt fuel pump with 3/8 nipples on the end and then a length of wire, so if your mechanical or electrical fuel pump fails, just having this little, it's old, it's used, but in a pinch this will get you home. And I pretty much always just leave that in there. I keep some rags and gloves. You gotta pop an axle apart or something, you don't want to get all hogged up. And then I'll show you the tool breakdown. So this is kind of my bare bones must-have kit. It's really nothing fancy, and I'm sure you guys will tell me what I'm forgetting, but this bag is full of I have different size bolts, like 3/8, 5/16 quarter, with nuts and washers and some fuses, some Allen wrenches. This is kind of just a miscellaneous bag. There's some like open end wrenches, vice grips, things like that. And that one I kind of just always keep in this bag. This is my Willys tool roll. So this has from, what do we go down to? 3/8 to 7/8, just open end wrenches. So that's handy to have. It's also tough for me because of all my engine swaps. I have to carry some metric tools as well. So that miscellaneous bag has a few like 10 and 12 millimeter and some metric Allen wrenches. So I keep that in here. And by far one of the most handy tools I have is in here. I did a review for this. It's kind of just a cheap Chinese tool company, but this thing has saved my bacon and helped out friends many times. So instead of carrying a million screwdrivers and Allen wrenches and things like that, I just carry this. So it's got nut drivers, different length screwdrivers, and then look at all these bits. So if you forget, you know, an Allen wrench or a Torx bit or Phillips or whatever, it's in here. And then I have this ancient Craftsman stubby 1/4-inch drive ratchet thingy, and this is low profile. Sometimes it's a pain, but you know, it's not as good as a regular screwdriver, but I can have like 50 screwdrivers and nut drivers in this little thing, and it has, I think it goes up to 12mm and 3/8 on nut drivers. So super handy, really small. This is a good thing, and you know, you can buy these types of kits from many different brands. Then just the basics: channel locks, vice grips. I do like to carry one flat head and one Phillips head, just a regular screwdriver. Some 3/8 Allen drivers for the impact gun. I don't usually even bother with a ratchet. And then I only carry this many sockets for the 3/8 gun: 9/16, half, 7/16, and an extension. You can do a lot with that, but I do need to buy a socket kit to take with me. This is probably the most useful tool. Just the old ball peen hammer and my little smallest snap-on pry bar. This thing has a million different uses. Always keep a fresh bag of zip ties. And then as far as spare parts, I keep a spare rear drive shaft. It's zip tied to the bottom of my passenger seat. That just lives in there. I don't carry a front drive shaft, so hopefully I don't break that. But the rear is small, and I do keep a spare in the Jeep. I also carry one 1310 U-joint. I just shrink wrap this stuff so it doesn't rust. And then I carry a spare set of 10-spline drive flanges in the event that I blow a hub or two, or someone else does, with the bolts, because the bolts are different between the hubs and the drive flanges. So I keep the bolts right in there. Shrink wrap. I spray it with WD-40 or fluid film, and then I shrink wrap it. And I usually keep them under the toolbox of the Jeep, but if I'm switching around, I like to just keep it in the bag. Then I can just take this out of one Jeep and put it in the other. So I will say I'm really thankful I have the means to be able to have multiple Jeeps, and it makes it fun. But it would be way easier having just one. You could just keep everything in there, because I do jump back and forth and I always forget something. But you know, first world problems, right? So I keep the 3/8 gun in the bag. If I pack this right, it just zips, and it's a little annoying to get it open and get something out of the bottom. So this goes behind the seat of the Jeep with the air compressor, and I take this electrical box on the trail because almost every time I've used something out of there, especially with the engine swap Jeeps. There's a lot of fuses and relays, and I keep those in the glove box. I keep like the basic number 87 relays. The Rotary Jeep has like 4 of them that run fuel pumps and fans, and those are pretty critical, so I always keep extras of those. The TDI Jeep has its own different things, but I think that's pretty much it. So this stuff will go in the truck and the Jeep, and we'll be ready to roll. Another really important thing I wanted to mention is I keep a good array of pipe plugs in my box here. So 1/8 and 1/4, I think there's a 3/8 and half down below. Any size that, you know, so if you're running an oil line that has a 1/2-inch pipe thread, always keep a plug. So like if your cooler, if you have an oil cooler, springs a leak, or the hose or fitting leaks, you can put a plug in it. For a regular Jeep, 1/8 and 1/4 are really all you need. So if your oil pressure line breaks, or your oil gauge line, you can plug it. So I have had that happen, and you know, the copper ones you can crimp and kind of get home, but having pipe plugs and a wrench to change them out in the woods is really important. So it's crazy, you know, something this small can save your engine from running out of oil out on the trail. I think we're going to take the old GMC on this trip. Just such a simple truck. Just check the oil. The old 12 valve doesn't take much to keep running. Just check the oil and coolant. I haven't driven it much because of all the road salt, but I have had it out a few times on some nice days. So everything looks good. This truck has been pretty good to me so far. So that's really it for the truck. Fire the old girl up and let it run for a while. I don't remember how much fuel's in here. It's probably been 2 weeks since this truck moved. It's about 30 degrees outside right now. Let's see what it does. It's alive. Gotta love a 12 valve. I'll just let that run for a while. It'll do it some good to get warmed up. We'll go out to the Ford and I gotta pull the hitch out of it. I was gonna take the Ford, but it's got junk in the bed. I picked up another Chevy 250 for a spare, so I'll pull the hitch out of it and we'll just put that one in the GMC. Temco sent me this little step hitch thing, and I really like it if you got to reach up in the bed. And it snugs up everything so the hitch doesn't rattle, and has a little bottle opener for when you get back home and you want to have a root beer or something. So it has a little 1/2-inch bolt that snugs up, holds that step on there, and it works really good to keep things from rattling. Just topped her off with on-road. It's 375.9 right now. A couple years ago I went to the Ohio Willys reunion and I paid $7.02 a gallon right on the PA-Ohio border, so 375 is a delight. This truck gets about 16-17 miles a gallon towing the trailer and about 20 empty, so a little bit better than the 7.3, but it's pretty expensive hobby when you start paying $7 a gallon for fuel, so I'm glad it went down. Now we'll go back to the house and hook up the trailer. Even though it's a ancient truck, I like to keep it original, but I do like having this little backup camera for hooking up the trailer. Alright, trailer's hooked up, truck's filled with fuel and everything checks out, looks good. Tires on the trailer are good. Sorry about all the wind. I just got the truck inspected 2 weeks ago, so it's safe, it's good. Another problem with having multiple Jeeps is I'm just plumb out of space. So, I gotta move the FC out. We'll put it in the lean-to and bring the Rotary Jeep in here to go over it and take the top off and things like that. But we're not done yet, so now I need to move the Ford to get to the Jeep, and then we can get on with the show. But I don't think you guys mind watching me start up other old engines. This thing has been pretty reliable for me as well. Stuff to run, so I'll just let that run. I don't run it very much, so it tends to get some condensation issues, so whenever I start it I usually like to let it, that thing can sit there and run all day. Let it get warm. Alright, we are finally to our specimen, so I'll fire this thing up and get it pulled in bay number 1. I like to let this run a while as well. Rotary Jeep starts every time. Rotary Jeep is in the shop, so now I'll just kind of check over the basics. It's been a really reliable, low maintenance vehicle for me, but I do like to check a few things. The transfer case does, or something under there leaks a little bit, so I haven't touched it since last fall as far as the transmission and transfer case. So I'm going to check the fluid in those and the differentials, and I just did an oil change on it a few weeks ago, so the oil's good. Other than that, should be ready to go. I like to air down, bro, before I load on the trailer, so I'm good when we get there. And check the fuel, be ready to roll. It's going to be really cold tomorrow when we go. It's 24 degrees in the morning, but then it's supposed to get up in the 40s. And I know it seems silly to take the top off because I have a heater in this. I have one of those Inferno cab heaters and a top, but when we're wheeling, I can't see very good. It's annoying to get in and out of, and I always rub trees with the roll cage or the windshield frame, so I don't want to tear my top. So I'd rather be a little chilly in the morning, but it's just a lot more fun experience, in my opinion, with no top. So when we're on the trailer and loaded, the top will be off, windshield will be down, and then we'll be ready to roll when we get there. So I'm going to take a few minutes and take the top off. When I made this top, my goal was to be able to take the whole top off with no tools by myself in less than 5 minutes and put it back on. So I tried to make it user-friendly, and I think I did a pretty good job. It's especially now that it's kind of fit to the cage a little better, it's a pretty easy job, but it does get annoying. I would like to store it without the top, but if anyone has a tip on how to keep your neighbor's cats from peeing on everything and climbing in stuff, I'd be all up for that. So unfortunately, when I store it out in the lean-to, I have to keep the top and doors on, so it really takes away from hopping in on a warm day every time I got to take the doors off. And I know I sound like a whiner, but someday I'll have big enough storage they can all be inside with the tops off and be ready to roll for summer wheeling. There you have it. I stopped my stopwatch. It took me 4 minutes and 27 seconds to get the top, and that includes the doors, all the bows and brackets off the Jeep. It'll probably take me a little longer to put it back on, but it's really a pretty slick process, but it makes for a much more fun Jeep experience, and I just think it looks cool too. I love the look with the windshield down and no roll bar, but for where we go, they're required, and it won't look so cool when my brains are splattered on the rock somewhere. So we'll keep the roll bar on and the seat belts. That'll get us entry into all the trails we need to go to, and hopefully keep us alive long enough to do it again sometime. I'm going to check the fuel. I did just fill up the other day, but we did our test drive video, so we put a few miles on it, but yeah, it's pretty full, so I think we got enough fuel for a day on the trail. On the road, I get in the teens with fuel economy. On the trail, I have no idea what it is, but I do know we can putt around on the trails all day and do a few rips on hill climbs and stuff, and I haven't had any fuel issues. I have a jerry can for the back, but I usually don't take it unless we're doing a long road trip, because this holds about 13 gallons, and that's plenty. Just for putting around the trails. It doesn't use a whole lot. And this is pre-mixed, so I keep this little bottle somewhere in the Jeep with some, I run Idemitsu Rotary premix. I do about an ounce to an ounce and a half per gallon. It's not that expensive, and it's a lot more reliable than the original metering pump that the Rotary engines have. Over in this toolbox, underneath there is a quart of oil, and I think I have a quart of coolant, and then I keep a spare inner tube in there. I do run tubes in these tires, and I figure if I keep that in there, I won't need it. On the other side, I have some more fluid. I have a spare oil cooler line. Both my lines are the same length and the same size fitting, so that's a little bit of insurance. And looks like I have more oil on this side. This is another kind of premix. This is just some engine oil. And more engine oil. So I also keep my jerry can spout in here when I'm hauling it, but anytime I'm not using something, I take it out. Every ounce of weight helps. This is a really light Jeep, and that's what makes it work so well, so I like to keep it as light as possible. I often remove the rear seat as well. Then I can fit a spare tire in there, but I usually don't carry one. So that's that. Another thing I already talked about, rear drive shaft. Isn't it cute? I keep a spare under there, hoping also that if I have it with me, I won't need it. And then in the glove box, I keep this little bag. It has a few tools, some fuses. It has my Phi-Tech tuning screen in case I want to adjust anything. It plugs in here, and you can monitor temps and change the tune and the fueling and all that stuff. And I keep my tire deflators and pressure gauge in here. I do carry a winch controller with me, but most of the time, unless I need to be out of the vehicle, I have a toggle switch here, so winch in and out. I've found that to be more convenient, and I don't have to plug it in. I do have a plug for the winch right here, and the master switch is under the hood. And then this one is the heater, which my son sits over here, and even with the top off, we'll run the heater. You can put your hands and feet under there and get thawed out a little bit. It also helps act as an auxiliary radiator on those hot days. But most important, always make sure you have a plethora of red-eye garage magnets. If you ever run into me on the trail, come up and say hi, check out the Jeep, tell me you follow me, and if I have a magnet, I'll give it to you. Alright, let's do a little under hood check, under the bonnet. Like I said, this thing, knock on sheet metal, has been pretty good for me, but just like any mechanical machine, it can possibly fail or cause problems, and I know everyone loves to hear stories about rotary engines having problems. So, but just like anything else, if you take care of it and you run it within its parameters, you know, you can't prevent everything, but you can use your head and try to keep things running good for as long as possible. So even though it's a rotary engine, it still has everything else that a regular engine does. It was starting to get warm, so it expanded a little bit. So just check the coolant. I run just regular green coolant in this. I do have one of those liquid ice additives in there. That's back from the summer, so that's why it's a little pink looking. So just check the coolant, which was good. And then rotary engines, it's really important to have good clean oil. So you can tell this baby's filled right up. I run AMSOIL synthetic in this, and I can do that because I'm not running the oil metering pump, so it's not burning the synthetic oil. There's a lot of misconceptions about rotary engines burning oil, and they do. They're designed to burn oil like a two-stroke, and that originally would use oil from the crankcase, but now we premix it, so my oil levels don't go down. It doesn't smoke from, you know, unless you have a bad oil control ring, it's not going to smoke just because it's a rotary engine. These two plugs right here were designed to inject oil into the rotors, but they didn't do the best job, and that's where some of the problems come from. So by premixing, you kind of avoid that. So this has a hydraulic clutch, so I also will check the clutch fluid and brake fluid, just because I haven't driven this in a while. If there were any leaks or evaporation, I don't want to lose my clutch or brakes out on the trail. This is my fuel pump system. So there's two fuel pumps, and the relays for them are right there. This is a fan relay, and the fuse for the fan is down here. That's really the only, I've had two things fail on this. Luckily they both happened in the driveway, oddly enough. One was I blew this oil cooler line, so since then I started carrying the extra line. So I replaced that last fall with parts from Summit, and should be good to go. And I also cooked this fuse block. I was using a cheap, like, Harbor Freight little fuse holder, and it melted, so I upgraded to a better one. That's critical for this engine since it doesn't have a mechanical fan. These two fans are controlled by the Phi-Tech computer. They come on and off with the temperature, and then these two smaller fans run whenever the engine's running. That's for the oil cooler. So you could get by without these, but you need these. If you're driving down the road, you can get away with them without having fans running. But in the trail, you know, we're crawling, there's really no airflow, so these are critical. So I carry extra fuse holders and extra fuses, and just keep an eye on the temps, just like you would anything else. This uses 4 spark plugs, 2 per rotor. I keep a spare for each in the toolbox in case I foul a plug. And then fuel filters right here. I changed that not too long ago, so I'm not worried about that. Air filter is good to go. So really, I think we're ready to rock and roll. So all the underhood checks are done. Time to flop the old windscreen down and flop it and lock it. I did go through and check the differentials, transmission, and transfer case, and everything was good. Nothing was low. So I think she's ready to roll. I guess that's it. I did just kind of give a visual check. You know, stuff wiggles loose and vibrates loose over time, but everything looked a-okay. Now it's time for the most controversial thing known to man, which is to air down, bro. So I use these little tire deflators, and I don't know why everyone gets so worked up over what tire pressure another person runs in their Jeep. With these NDTs, I run like 15 on the street and like 8 to 10 on the trails. And if you watch all my videos, you'll see even at like 8 or 9 PSI, when you're up against a sharp rock, I mean, it'll smush down, you know, half of the sidewall will smush, and you know, you don't want to pinch a tube out in the middle of the woods. So there's a balance between traction, also ride height. So the more you deflate, the less ground clearance you have. And I found that 10 PSI is good, and then you're not getting flats and popping beads and stuff like that. So that's what I run. I don't care what anybody else runs, but it starts a ton of fights. Not really on YouTube, but on Instagram and Facebook. These people will go nuts. So I do air down before I put it on the trailer. Then we're ready to go when we get there. And then when my straps are tight, you know, they don't change if I deflate on the trailer. So I'm gonna go around and do all 4, and then we're getting close to loading up. All right, this is kind of interesting. I didn't air this one down yet. It's at 12 pounds. So I think I don't think I ever aired up from the last one. And I've been driving on the street like 12 pounds, so I'll run it down to about 9. And we'll call it good. It's 11. The deflators don't work that good when you're that low, and I think my deflators are set to turn off at 9, so 11 pounds. They're not quite that precise. All right, there's like 8 or 9, so we'll call that good. All right, I think everything is ready. Now I just kind of pack it in here, leaving room for the cooler. Rank it in here, and then put a strap on it. Oh, I also really like to take my tub of towels, because I will get greasy doing something, or muddy or something. So yes, then we'll put the cooler in here. If I'm not taking a spare tire, sometimes it's better to leave the back seat in, because it takes up some space to keep stuff from rattling around so bad. And this seat's pretty cool. It can also fold up like that. So it just kind of depend on how much more stuff I throw back here. Well, I think that it's all ready, so I'm going to start it up, let it get up to temperature, and then run it down. I think I'm going to top off the fuel, take it for a little test cruise, make sure everything's good, and then load it on the trailer. Hopefully it starts. These rotary engines, you never know. You probably won't be able to hear anything, but I figured you might as well come with me on their shakedown drive. Hopefully it doesn't start raining. almost forgot, a really important tool is a spindle socket. I like this kind. I got this from Willys. It just has the slot in it, so you don't need a ratchet, pry bar, or screwdriver, large stick. So you never know when you gotta pull a hub and spindle off. Alright, everything's loaded up. We are ready to rock and roll. So that's not that exciting, but it's just a taste of kind of a regular thing I do around here before a trip or event. So that's the unfun part. The fun part hasn't even started yet, so stay tuned for that. In part 2, you'll get to see where we're going, what we're doing, and hopefully return trip safely without too much damage. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.